supply chain and the wholesale distribution industry. Well, joining us to speak about that today is Robert Eastman, Senior Analyst, Supply Chain Management at Technology Evaluation Centers. Well, Bob, welcome.
Nice to join you this morning.
Bob, we want to talk, of course, about the wholesale distribution industry, but maybe we should start with a definition of it. Just exactly what do we mean when we talk about that industry?
Well, that's interesting because my feeling is that when you talk about the wholesale distribution industry, at some level it's always a generalization because underneath that is really upwards of 70 different types of wholesale distribution companies. And so if you're talking grocery distribution, that's going to be a lot different than a conversation around drug and pharma distribution, and obviously a lot different than around industrial distribution. So you really do need to get down into the details and understand that there's different issues going on in different parts of the wholesale distribution industry.
You know, we want to talk about some of those issues. We want to talk about some of those challenges. But let me ask you this as a sort of a threshold question. Let's talk about the health, if you will, of the wholesale distribution industry. How would you evaluate that? What would you say that is?
Well, the wholesale distribution industry has gone through some, sort of the same ups and downs a lot of other industries have gone through. And I think in 2011, what we heard and what we saw, 2011, 2012, they were seeing more optimism. I think now we're seeing maybe a little more pessimism in the industry. There's a little more uncertainty. Affordable Care Act and things going on in Europe, et cetera. So there's a little more pessimism now, I would say. There's a lot of merger and acquisition activity, so there's some consolidation going on in the industry, which may be reflective of that uncertainty. So, we are, again, talking about a broad-based industry. There's pockets of great health and great optimism. If I had to generalize, Russell, I would have to say there's probably a little more pessimism in 2013 than there was in perhaps 2012.
You mentioned earlier that there are different industries, if you will, of course, where their wholesale activity, distribution activity is going on. And I wonder if the health picture that you just described is something that varies from one industry to another. Would that be the case? Or is pretty much wholesale distribution the same across the board in terms of this health?
No, I would say there are pockets. I mean, certainly if you're looking at drug and pharmaceutical, obviously a big concern there are the regulatory issues that they have to face. In general, there's I would say a hyper competitiveness across the industry, so that is sort of common. But again, grocery and the grocery distribution industry is obviously a lot different than pharma, and so I would say that there are pockets. Overall, there's a general pessimism, but there is also, a great level of sort of an innovative spirit going on in the industry. So there's hope, but there's also a general pessimism, I would say, Russell.
Let's talk about some of with a little bit more specificity, some of the challenges that the wholesale distribution industry is facing. And then let's discuss the technology that is being used to counter those challenges, those difficulties. How would you characterize that?
One thing that comes to mind when I hear about, when we talk about challenges in the distribution industry is disintermediation. We know that companies are ever more focused on value delivery, value creation. In a lot of cases, Russell, that means shortening that supply chain to the extent that they can, and companies are trying to make sure that every piece of that supply chain is delivering value. And unfortunately, when you're talking about that, the question comes up. A lot of companies look to see where they can shorten their supply chain, and a lot of times that focus falls on the wholesale distributor. So the whole thing of disintermediation is probably one of the biggest challenges. And again, just we're talking about a relatively low margin business in a lot of cases and a highly fragmented industry. So all those things sort of combine to make for some very special challenges that other industries don't face.
Well, given that those margins are so thin, then clearly meeting those challenges is imperative. Specific types of technology then that would be used to help them do that. How would you characterize those? What would those be?
Right. Well, there's two things that come to mind there, Russell. Wholesale distributors, one, have to focus on operational effectiveness. And the other thing that every distributor is focusing on is revenue generation. So they're looking at investments in those two areas. So 360-degree view of the customer is one. Distributors don't want to pass up any revenue opportunity. So it's a case of looking at every customer and looking at all the interactions you have with that customer. Another thing we hear wholesale distributors focusing on is profitability. So, you want to serve every customer profitably, and certainly if there's customers that, are not profitable for you, then wholesale distributors have to consider, what they do with that customer. So those are a couple that come to mind. The technology investments that really address revenue generation are very big to wholesale distributors right now.
Given, once again, the margins being as thin as they are, I would think that this is an area that is ripe for innovation. What exactly is going on in this area in terms of innovation that helps these companies overcome these barriers and be able to live and survive with these very thin margins that they are dealing with?
I put those into a couple different categories. One are technology investments, and others would be industry-wide innovation. Now, under the umbrella of industry innovation, a couple of very interesting developments. Amazon.com has decided to come into the industry and act as a distributor, and followed shortly thereafter by Google. So both these companies are coming in and doing what I would call disruptive innovation in the industry. There's also examples like Fastenal, who is pursuing a fascinating strategy around what they call distributor managed inventory. And their distributor managed inventory is really centering around vending machines. So if you look at Fastenal's plans for rolling out vending machines, it's very aggressive. I think between 2010 and 2011, they had rolled out something like 7,000 vending machines. By the end of 2013, they think they're going to have 30,000 machines installed. So this is a real disruptive innovation where they're essentially changing the game a bit and installing vending machines on site at customers. So the customer now has a more convenient way, to get their supplies, more convenient billing. Fascinating to watch, and that's going to be a real disruptive innovation.
Let me just ask you about that for a moment.
Sure.
Those vending machines will be vending what? What are the products inside?
There's a range of things. It can be MRO supplies. It can be wrenches. It can be tools. It can be replacement kinds of things. I think Fastenal has targeted maybe several different categories. So it can be a range of things depending on the customer's needs.
Mm-hmm. So it'll be all this inventory will be kept on site and will be to hand, quite literally, when needed to.
That's right, and it really looks like a vending machine. So the way they're rolling these out is just fascinating to watch, and I think it's a real game changer.
Going forward, what would you say? Let's look down the road a bit, crystal ball time. Where are we going in wholesale distribution? Where's the industry going?
Well, the future, I think, is just a little bit uncertain. Wholesale distributors have always played a real critical role in the economy. If you think about it, it's a $5 trillion contribution they're making to the economy, something like 300,000 or 400,000 different distributors. So they've played a real role. Amazon and Google are going to upset things a little bit. There's a lot of consolidation going on in the industry. There's no doubt in my mind that wholesale distributors play a critical role. And so the future, longer term, is a little bit uncertain. And one of the disruptive innovations we shouldn't overlook is 3D printing. Mm-hmm. Imagine the possibility now of companies being able to print out a part when they want one. And some people are saying that impact is going to be felt 3 years from now. Some people are saying 5 years. Some people are thinking 10 years. I would think that every wholesale distributor would be sitting up and taking note of this. And that's going to be an interesting development to watch.
Well, uncertain future, as you say, but nevertheless, clearly wholesale distributors will have a major part to play in that future. Bob, listen, I know you're busy, but you took time to meet with us today. Thank you very much for that.
Russell, it was great talking with you.
Well, it's Bob Eastman, Technology Evaluation Centers, and speaking with us today about the supply chain and the role that the wholesale distribution industry plays in it. Well, thank you for watching.